If you're like me when you get bored, you might just watch random compilations of video games. When you watch enough of these compilations, you eventually start to see the same game over and over and over again. The one that comes to mind is LSD Dream Emulator. Believe it or not, at one point this was a pretty unknown game. Not so much anymore. However, there's another game I see every now and then called L.O.L. Not laughing out loud, but lack of love. Despite the name being L.O.L, there's very little comedy about this game. There is a little, I guess, but that's not the point of the game. This game starts with a cutscene. A long cutscene. It's about 5 minutes long. It doesn't sound that long, but when you're sitting there watching it, it feels like forever. Let me try and summarize it here pretty poorly. There is a robot, as you can see here. His computers tell him go to this planet, so he does. He lands on the planet and unleashes his robot armada. That's really it. If you were to watch the entire 5-minute cutscene, that's pretty much what you'd get from it. After that, you are just thrown into the game. You start off as this little egg orb thing. You are given no explanation, nothing. I'll try and tell you what I know. This is you. You play as this little cretin thing. I can't lie, I'm not even sure what you're called. You have a few basic things you can do. You can kind of shuffle around here. You can make some noise. You can even, oh my lord, come on. Believe it or not, this is a mechanic that comes up every now and then. Other than that, you're just kind of left not knowing what to do for a little bit. When I first played, I started wandering around for a little bit. Then this cutscene plays. Don't worry, it's a lot shorter. It's not much, but it gives you a little hint on what you're supposed to do, and that's evolve. The game doesn't exactly tell you how. I first thought evolving would mean beating up everything in sight. You know, standard video game rules. So I do that and get nowhere. Then another cutscene happens. It shows you that you need the evolved form to get out of this area, but it still doesn't tell you how to do that. Don't worry, I'll tell you how. You have to befriend some of the other little monsters. Each has their own way of doing it. The first time I figured this out, I admittedly got pretty lucky. I just went up to one of these shrimp-shelled things and just started talking to it. And it worked. I got an orb from it. What's the orb do? Not sure, but I've got one. Now this game is a mechanic it doesn't tell you about. Hunger. You have to eat to survive. If you're lucky, you can live off plants and not have to harm anything. For now, that's what I'll do. Plants are pretty abundant here, so it doesn't seem like that'll be a problem. But if things got bad, I would have to eat one of my newfound friends. It's unfortunate, but that's just the rules. You can tell how hungry you are by the number of these little rings. If you have 1 ring, you should probably eat. If you have around 5, you're probably full. What about the orb itself? That's actually your health. You can actually get into little scuffles here and there, and you will take damage. Standard game logic, take enough damage, you die. Deal enough damage, and they die. Combat is pretty straightforward. Just spam the attack button. No real tactics or anything. Every now and then a monster will run away and you have to chase him down and keep beating him up, but that's about it. Sometimes they'll call in backup, but that's really rare. Besides the orb, there's no HUD elements at all, so you're kinda on your own to figure out what to do and where to go. Hitting start, you can go to a menu that shows you all the little creatures in the area. Hovering over each picture will give you little hints on how to befriend them. Although they don't always make sense, I'll go over that more when I come across it. First, let's befriend all the monsters in this area. This one is senti-scared, so I will beat up this giant centipede. I cannot lie, the second it ran towards me, I got really scared. It just moved faster than I expected. On to the next monster. These little guys, they look more like bugs, I guess. All you need to do is hit this mushroom. Hitting it will allow it to open up and protect them from the rain. I guess they don't like to be wet. Once you've got all the orbs, you gotta find the crystals. They're just somewhere on the map usually. You just gotta walk around until you find it. Once you find it, you give each crystal an orb and you turn into an egg. All that's left to do now is to hatch and evolve. And you evolve, you might notice you're quite a bit different in size and in looks. Not even exactly sure what you would call yourself at this state. You don't quite look like a bug, but you don't quite look like a full-on normal animal either. Regardless, it's time to move on. To move on, you gotta climb up these flowers and, you know, don't make me say it, man. When you've done your business, you're now in a new area. I don't know the names of the areas. I always just called this a wasteland, because it looks like a wasteland. If you look around here, you can find some cool details, actually. Like giant footprints from the robot from the beginning. At least I assume that's whose footprint it is. You can also find a bunch of giant bones everywhere. You can actually go into these and hide under them. Why would you want to hide under them? Because this is where the game introduces flying enemies. I can't lie, I don't really know what the point of these things are. Sure, they attack you and do damage, but not a lot of damage. Almost none at all. All they kind of do is just pester you, really. There's an enemy here that can call them in, too, for backup when you're beating them up. If a flying enemy hits you at the right time, it can let the on-ground guys hit you and get a cheap shot in. But they already kind of have a hard time landing any hits on you. Regardless, you can go into these giant bones and hide from the flying creatures. This is where the game kind of gets a little difficult. There's not many resources here. There's no real fruits or anything to eat. So you're gonna have to resort to beating up some animals and eating them, as unfortunate as it is. It's just the circle of life. You can beat up these yellow guys and not feel bad about it, they're kinda mean. Speaking of these yellow guys, they have a really weird way to befriend them. I've beaten the game and I still don't really know how I did it. Their hint says something about a banana flag? I don't even know what that means. At first, I thought it literally meant a flag with a banana on it, so that's what I looked for. As you can imagine, I turned up with nothing. Then I just tried to look for a flag. Nothing. Then I just tried to look for something that looked like a banana. Nothing. For a while, I just wandered around. I had no clue how to befriend these guys. Eventually, I befriended them by talking to them while they were sleeping, which I think is a bug because they still attack me on sight. They even called in the flying guys to help them, so I'm not sure what's going on here. There's a good chance that this could be like a translation error. This is a fan translation. This never came to America, or anywhere but Japan. That's the only other thing I can think of that caused this. Well, anyway, I've got 3 orbs now. I gotta find the crystals. While I do that, here's some fun facts about the game, I guess. This game was originally going to be on the PlayStation 1. I'm not sure how far the PlayStation 1 version got, but at some point during its development, the head of Sega reached out to the team. He somehow convinced the lead devs to switch to the Dreamcast, pretty much making it a Dreamcast exclusive. That was probably for the better, as I don't think this game would have been the same if it was on the PlayStation 1. Back to the game, did I ever find the crystals? No. There are no crystals on this level. What you're supposed to do is go to this tree on the bottom left corner of the map and climb up it. You're supposed to climb on this leaf and then you'll drop down into the river below and just float down it for a while. There's a pretty long cutscene here again, but nothing really happens, so I'm not going to show much of it. After the cutscene, you're greeted to a bonus area. This area has one objective on it if you really want to do it. You can lead these 2 penguin guys together and you get an orb, that's it. Completely optional, but if you were missing an orb for whatever reason, there you go. You only need 2 this time around to evolve into this dog thing. After you evolve, you get another cutscene. Here you can see that you've actually been on the back of a giant monster this entire time. Pretty interesting, actually. He has an entire ecosystem just on his back and doesn't even seem to care. He knocks you off, though, onto this island. At least let's hope it's an island. Who knows, it could be another giant creature we're on. The dog thing you play as is actually based on the developer's dog. At least the dog he had at the time. That dev's name is, I'm not even gonna try to pronounce that. They were the main writer for the game. They also came up with some gameplay elements as well. Like eating and this. Actually, the development studio was quite small. As far as I can tell, the company L.O.L only ever had 8 employees at a time. Most of the devs were actually former Square employees. The original Square, not the Square Enix we have now. Square is most well known for its Final Fantasy games. Now I know what you might be thinking. This game looks kinda repetitive. And to an extent it is. You do pretty much the same thing every time. But the new environments and little monsters you come across keep it fresh. The evolved forms also help a lot too. Most of the time the evolved forms are purely visual. Speaking of evolved forms, let's see what the dog is up to. Not much, just kind of wandering around, as dogs typically do. Except I got stuck in like a spider web. I can't move, and this thing's coming to kill me. It's over. Well, I saved a little while ago, so it's not that big of a deal. Oh. Well, that kind of looked like the robot from the beginning. It saved my life. Unintentionally, I'm sure of it. It looks like it just tripped or something, but works out for me. Back to my objective of trying to help and befriend more little creatures. After the dog form, you turn into... I'm not exactly sure what I'm looking at here, but you turn into it. It's bigger than the dog, for sure. Whatever it is. This stage is a little tricky. Well, not tricky, time-consuming. You have to wait for these little flying things that come by and light up the trees. When the trees are lit up, they grow, allowing you to move past them a little easier. Sounds simple enough, right? Well, you're right, it is really simple. Except they only come out at night, and it just turned day. So now I gotta blow some time till it turns night. How about to blow some time, some more dumb facts about the game? Here's one for you. This game actually reviewed pretty well. It got some good grades from all the Japanese magazines and stuff. But despite that, the game sold really poorly. The only official reason I can find for this is that it just didn't mesh well with all the other games coming out at the time. Which could be true. But I also couldn't find any evidence that this game was actually ever advertised. This could just be my crappy research skills, but I couldn't find any advertisements for this game anywhere. But it also could have been advertised and just not archived right. Who knows? Okay, so it turns out I'm a complete idiot. But that shouldn't be news to anybody. What you're supposed to do is you're supposed to race the flying guys. I just came across this on accident and didn't even know this is what you were supposed to do. But after you get done racing them, they'll give you a new ability that lets you light up the plants and stuff at night. Now that you're on the other side of the map, this cutscene plays. Now, when I was playing this, I thought this was a bomb and that I was on a time limit. I was half right. It's not a bomb, but there is a time limit. I have around 12-ish minutes to get something done. Not that you have to do anything. The entire part coming up after this is scripted. So what can you do in 12 minutes? Well, you can befriend the rest of the creatures if you haven't already done that. Otherwise, you can just wander around and do nothing. Just kind of wander and wait for the inevitable. What is the inevitable, though? I will just let you see for yourself. After all that's done, you wake up. All around you are the corpses of all the friends you just made, and their former habitat turned into a wasteland. If it's not clear, this is a metaphor for climate change, and to some extent global warming. I am not going to talk about these subjects in this video. It will just start a giant comment more that I don't feel like dealing with. There are resources online where you can come to your own conclusions on it. So if you're interested in more of these subjects, you can look around pretty easily and find a lot on them. You just won't find any of that here. Ahead of you is one of the few remaining creatures. If you just follow it, you'll be greeted to another cutscene. This one is long and just kind of the same thing over and over again, so I'll just skip to the funny part. All you gotta do is kind of just get kicked up this entire mountain. It takes a little bit, so how about one more interesting fact thing? The creator of this game has recently showed some interest in remastering or remaking this game entirely for newer consoles. They said they think the game would be more widely accepted nowadays. Is that true? Hard to tell. I think it would strike pretty big with the indie crowd personally, but I don't think the mainstream crowd would either get it or care. But then again, you never know until you try. Now that we've reached the top of the mountain, finally we can get kidnapped. Wait, we can get kidnapped? What? Why would we want to get kidnapped? After you get kidnapped, you awaken this cell-like place. Around you are dozens of corpses and some guards. The walls look like they're made of flesh. This game took a pretty dark turn. Now how do you get out of this area? Well, first you have to beat up the guards, of course, as you would in any prison. Then you have to collect all these flowers with colors on them. Then you have to play Simon Says, just like a real prison. Now, I'm not going to show the entire game to you. As much as I'd like to, I feel like I'd be doing the game a disservice by doing that. This is a game I think you should just go get yourself and play. I know, I'm kinda cutting the video off as soon as it starts getting good, but I don't want to spoil anymore. And if you do pick up the game, don't worry, I actually skipped a large portion of the game. Well, at least in the video, I actually played it while making the video. If you're interested in the game, it doesn't go for that much. Well, I mean, it's still a lot of money, but not as much as I was expecting. Some Dreamcast games can really get up there. There is always the other method of getting it, but I can't talk about that here. This game is an easy recommend from me, even if it does really just get confusing at times. That brings us to the end of the video. If you liked the video, I'd appreciate it if you left a like, maybe even subscribed. And if you know of any obscure or forgotten video games, please leave a comment down below. I'd love to check them out. Anyways, till next time.